and I've been working with multiple teams across the board over the last few years in order to figure out what is the right developer experience to build.
Yeah, and interesting. We bring Adobe multiple times here, and people would think, well, Adobe is just is a great company that builds software for creatives, right? Creative arts to do business application, but they use a lot of Kubernetes, right? You have a lot of clusters, you have a lot of developers building this, and you're doing a cloud native platform, Vikram. So I'm excited today to learn more about how to make it secure and easy for developers, right? They just want to write code, they want to be very efficient, but we have to have a secure platform.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Carlos. Everyone knows and loves Adobe products. Everyone has heard of at least one or two products, but no one is really aware of the people how that work behind the scenes, building the infrastructure that those products will run so smoothly and will be so great for graphic designers or all types of different personas.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think we have some slides to show. We can bring it up.
Yeah, let me share my screen.
All right.
There you go. So as we said, let's talk about developer experience. And today, the flavor of the day is going to be talking or defining what developer experience means. What does it mean to be enterprise ready? What does it mean to be secure by default? And then we'll go deeper into like how we think about developer experience as being composed of different layers. And finally, we'll wrap it up by talking a little bit about our learnings and takeaways, which are really interesting because those are things that we have accumulated over the years. So before we really get deeper into it, I'd like to start with a few thought-provoking questions that we at Adobe also continue to think about day in and day out. So the first question is, are your developers spending more time on coding or they're spending more time fighting the platform, right? The second question that we think about is, how long does it take for a developer to ship code in your organization? Have you been measuring it, and like whether are you happy with the amount of time the developers take, or the developers are they happy with it? The third one is really interesting, and it's a very thought-provoking question. How do you know that your platform hasn't been compromised yet? Right? Do you have enough controls to be able to even figure out like whether there has been compromise or not? And finally, the fourth one, which is actually my favorite question to ask: if your developer platform were a product you had to sell, would anyone buy it? Right? So Adobe and other organizations, we are in the business of building products that we sell to other customers. But the developer platforms that we build are internal to our internal developers, right? We I don't know, whether everybody thinks of them as building products, but we have realized that we need to think about like building these platforms as products. And we've also realized that as we start thinking about building the platform as a product, there's a lot to be desired. So let me know in the comments, if you resonate with these questions, or whether you feel that these are the right set of questions in your mind as well.
Yeah, similar questions in the CNCF working group, platform working group on a maturity model, right? These are the type of things, and there's a blog post that talks about treating your IT platform as a product, the same way you treat your consumer-facing products. So this resonates at least with the CNCF working group that are doing great work around the white papers and the maturity model.
Absolutely.
Okay. And shout out to sorry Vic, just want to mention that we did have a session with some of the working group members, and we will also link to that one. And shout out to Dominic, who was a guest on that session, and also a good friend of the platformers.
So now we get to see an end user implementing the architecture, right, and the patterns, like Adobe.
Yep. Okay, so before we get to the different layers of developer experience, there's a journey that the developer takes, and that alongside that journey, they're typically asking different questions from the platform team. A typical developer would start with discovery, where they'd be asking questions like, how do I get started, what tools and technologies are already available? And thereafter, once they have figured out the answers to that, they'd be looking to create and ask questions such as, how do I create software, what are the best practices for the platform, what are the security and compliance considerations for Adobe. Once they have something that they have created, let's say through some templates that we provide as a platform team, they onboard to the platform using those templates, and the platform then registers their software as an entity that they can work with. Thereafter, developers generally want to integrate with the existing systems, and figure out how this software fits into the larger ecosystem. They'd like to then deploy and alongside consider rollback and recovery strategies. And they'll be thereafter soon enough thereafter, like, thinking about production readiness, and would like to have monitoring, logging, metrics, and thinking about how to handle incidents and outages. And finally, they'd be thinking about how do I improve, optimize, or even measure success. So as a platform team at Adobe, we think about, these different phases that the developer really goes through, and try and see, like, if we can answer some of these questions that the developers are really asking of us, and how easy are we making it for the questions to be answered, or the developers to find the information, or onboard, or integrate, or operate. Okay. So moving on, our goal essentially is to write better software faster, right? That's the goal that we have identified as a developer platform organization. And there are different considerations that contribute to developer experience, right? So Srinivas Perry, as we talked about, he talked about some of these considerations in his Q2 talk. Just to set the context, I'm going to just do a review of, those once again. So a good developer experience is about reducing cognitive load on the developers, ensuring that they are able to get into a flow state very quickly, and have feedback loops to improve things. In other words, a good developer experience helps developer focus more on creating value and less on all the other stuff that consumes the time. For more details, I would encourage you to watch Perry's Q2 talk. We'll add a link to that talk in the comment section. You can always go back and reference it. I will recommend that you do so. So let's now quickly have a overview of the developer experience foundation at Adobe. As you can imagine, we have a source on the left, which is GitHub in our case, and the destinations are there on the right. As of right now, most of our curated developer experience that we provide is focused on deploying containers on the Kubernetes clusters, which is mentioned as a destination on the right. This is done via the developer experience foundation in the middle, and we'll go deeper into the developer experience foundation a little later in the slides. But essentially, the developer experience foundation is connecting the source and the destination. And in simple terms, the foundation gets the desired state from the source and updates the actual state on the destination. This foundation, as you would have guessed, is Gitops-based. The foundation also exposes the APIs. Yeah, go ahead, Carlos.
No, I was going to say that you were actually describing GitOps, right? We have Kubernetes, we have source code, and we have the desired state and the active state, and there's something in the middle, right, that takes care of that.
Right. So I'm going to do a quick overview of GitOps also, because as I'm talking to people, I've realized that there is some confusion about what GitOps really is. So I have a slide to go over that as well. We'll get to it shortly. The foundation, as I said, also exposes APIs, which are used by the various developer services, which are sitting nicely on the top, to power the developer experience that we offer to the users who use the platform. The surfaces include IDEs, GitHub, and Developer Home, which is our single unified developer portal for the whole of Adobe. But we just talked about containers, right? That Kubernetes clusters as a destination. What about the other destinations? So we've been working on static websites. We've been working on CDNs as destinations as well, and there are more destinations that we want to cater to in the future. Plus, I think it's important to clarify that it's not that the other destinations mentioned over here are not getting catered to. It's just that we, as a developer platform group, we've been providing this curated and opinionated central developer experience. And a lot of teams have joined the bandwagon, but there are a few teams which are not fully onto our platform, but we are working closely with them to get them onboarded as well.
And that's the adoption journey, right? That everyone building an internal developer platform goes through, right? You at day one, you cannot have all customers
Yeah,
onboarded, right?
yeah,
And then you build a adoption, and you build the things that make sense first, right? And there could be things like escape hatches, or they continue doing it while you build the next set of features, like a product, right?
yeah. I mean, I think we can't boil the ocean on day one, so we have been focused mostly on the container-related workloads, and we feel that we're in a good position with respect to the containers. There's more to be desired on that front also, but going forward, we'll be trying to cater to the other destinations as mentioned over here as well. Okay, as I mentioned, GitOps. So let's do a quick refresher on it. I may be preaching to the choir over here, but it is important because, as I was mentioning, when I'm talking to people, I see confusion about what exactly GitOps is. Again, there's Git as a source on the left, which has a desired state, and the destination on the right, which has the actual state of the system, and GitOps Foundation is sitting nicely in the middle. GitOps principle number one states that the desired state should be specified declaratively, and principle number two states that the state is version and immutable. Most folks that I've talked to are aware of these and they understand these two principles. And but I think the problem is like they're mostly aware about these two principles only. Like they feel that this is all that GitOps is. But the GitOps Foundation, obviously, we all know, right? It's getting the desired state from the source and applying the desired state to the destination. But the important part over here is that the desired state from the source is pulled automatically, and that is the third principle of GitOps. This means that if there are any changes to the desired state in Git, they are automatically pulled and applied to the destination. GitOps Foundation also observes the destination for any drifts. If for some reason the actual state is not the same as the desired state anymore, GitOps states that the desired state should be continuously reconciled. This may happen, let's say by someone accidentally deleting a resource on a Kubernetes cluster using kubectl. Let's say they delete a namespace or they delete a deployment object or a service object accidentally. So if GitOps is done right, that state will be restored because it will be continuously reconciled. So with that understanding, let us look at what Adobe has as of today for the container related workloads. So this is a little bit busy diagram, but this diagram is about Flex, which is Adobe's Gitops-based CI/CD solution. We at Adobe have talked about Flex at several different occasions as well. So I'm going to keep it very short, as far as this particular diagram is concerned. We have a hub and spoke model where the hub being the yellow slash orange box in the middle, and the spokes being the target or the remote clusters on the right. The hub cluster is where the GitOps magic is really happening because you have Argo CD and Argo workflows and all of that, like running on that hub cluster. The source is on the left in Git, as you can see over here, and the remote clusters are the destinations that we were mentioning in the previous slide. There's also a developer portal. As I was mentioning, it's one of the surfaces, which is called Developer Home to the far right. And there's a CI/CD experience plugin, which is getting powered by a Flex backend, which is our bespoke backend that we have created, we send a lot of information from the hub clusters over to the Flex backend, and it's aggregated over there. And then the CI/CD experience plugin is actually fetching the data from the aggregated data and showing it nicely in Developer Home. So,
Vikram, I just want to say that, like you mentioned, like everybody starts with a simple GitOps mindset of like you have one Git repo, right? It could be GitHub or any Git server, and a destination, maybe a Kubernetes cluster, and then you have the desired state on that. In your case, this is enterprise, so you need to have. You're not going to have one cluster. You're going to have multiple clusters. You're not going to have one Git repo. It gets exponential, more complex, but the idea is using the same principles of GitOps to manage it. But I wanted to highlight that this is maybe look at it when if there's enterprises looking at this to do the same thing at scale, they have sometimes have problems because Argo CD, it cannot manage like million clusters, right? And their connectivity are not located. So a lot of enterprises have kind of an instance of this for a group of clusters located in a on-premise, right? And maybe this an instance of this located in a certain region, like in Europe, and another one in. So it's you shard your platform in terms of where you're running, right? And that's a way that Adobe, I believe that have done it in a way that they can shard the system, just repeated it, right? You want another one of these, you get another one deployed for it could be for organizations, right?
yeah, and you're absolutely right. Actually, the next slide exactly talks about, like, what you just described. The if you look at the title for this particular site, it says GitOps at work, right? But what Adobe is really doing is GitOps at scale. So if we talk about GitOps at scale, the diagram kind of transforms to having multiple hub clusters, as you can see in the middle, right? Now we have, like, Flexbox number one, which is our hub cluster, the original hub cluster that we started with. We have another hub cluster that we have added in order to handle the scale that Carlos was mentioning about. And then there is a redirect service in the middle, right, which is actually taking care of redirecting the traffic between the boxes. Think of it like, a load balancer for, the different Argo CD instances, in simple terms. So it's having some redirection rules. We as a platform team decide the rules, and we decide like which services going on to which of these hub clusters or these flex boxes. But as you can also see, the remote clusters are all connected to both the Argo CD instances over here, right?
And you're using Argo CD, Argo workflows, and Argo rollouts. That means that
and events.
Adobe is a fan.
Argo
and
events.
Argo events.
So if
so Adobe is a big fan
yeah,
of the Argo project.
I don't know, I don't know of many companies actually out there who are using all 4 Argo projects, and we are one of them.
There's companies I can vouch for that. They're doing it, but not at this scale. Talking about scale, we're going to link to 2 blog posts that Adobe recently did on scaling and doing an analysis of scaling Argo workflows and Argo CD. That's on the Canoe website. We mentioned Canoe project here, and if you go to the blog site in Canoe, you will find those articles on like going deep into the observability and metrics of these 2 systems to being used at scale. But then the net is these are CNCF projects that are being used at scale. If you configure them correctly, they can scale in terms of distributed manner, right?
Yeah. So I think we can share some links to the KubeCon EU talk that we had earlier. We had a talk at GitOpsCon also earlier this year. We can add links corresponding to those also in the chat. Again, trying to sort of keep it short over here because this information has already been shared. There's more newer information that we'd like to share in this in this talk. So I think with that, let's move ahead. But I think the key part over here in this particular slide to note is that we've shown 2 flex boxes, but in order for us to be able to scale out, we can continue to add more flex boxes. We have shown 2, but 3 or 4 or 5. We are already working on, adding the 4th one right now to the mix. We already have 3 flex boxes. We've shown 2 over here. But this allows us to be able to scale to thousands or tens of thousands of services that Adobe has in the future, and add more different workloads also that we can cater to. Okay.
Vic, I'm curious to ask before you continue, if are you speaking in terms of fleet management at Adobe, or is this terminology not resonating with you?
When you say fleet management, you're talking about the clusters themselves?
Clusters.
Number of
Yeah,
clusters?
I'm talking. I'm mainly talking about like treating clusters as groups, like cluster groups. Like Carlos said, to handle the scale, you have to lump them together into groups. So, is this something that you are doing at Adobe or is exploring?
Yeah. So the cluster groups, I don't. I mean, these clusters that you see over here, Flexbox 1, Flexbox 2, these are special clusters. So there is a central team at Adobe which is,
Management clusters.
sorry, come
They're
again?
known as management clusters.
Management clusters
People
or control
call them.
plane clusters, if you will.
Yeah,
So
control plane.
these are like, built on top of the vanilla clusters that our platform team or the core infrastructure team provides. So there's a separate team that is working on creating these Adobe specific clusters. They provide us with these clusters, and then we add these components on top of it, which is Argo CD and Argo workflows and Argo events and the provisioner, as you can see over here, are the different observability components that are required, and that comprises of Flexbox. So our team is managing some of these specialized clusters as part of a control plane, if that's what you mean.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's different, but it's still interesting. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to divert from the main topic.
Yeah, so we're going to next quarter, for people to be aware, we're going to bring another host from Adobe that is going to be talking about fleet management on this manner of like provisioning the clusters, managing them with Gitops, inserting add-ons at scale, and then it's tenant clusters. So that was a good question, but so we'll bring the expert that talks about the ethos core system that Adobe has, and we'll bring some folks from that.
Right. So I think there is, as Carlos mentioned, that team is, doing the fleet management separately, but they are also using the same set of technologies, such as Argo CD, to manage the fleet of clusters. But these clusters that you see over here, they are also coming from that fleet, but we are adding something more on top of it in order to make it work for Flex.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Let's quickly talk about the developer experience milestones. So that's another way to look at the developer experience journey in terms of the milestones when they go from concept to code to cloud to eventually to the customer. A developer can come in with a concept and ask for some boilerplate code to get them started. We offer bootstrappable golden templates in our Backstage-based developer portal to get them started, which is part of our paved roads that we want them to use. We provision some resources for them one time. For example, we create service IDs for them. We create generic users for them as part of the scaffolder provisioning that we provide. But let's quickly talk about what does boilerplate really mean over here. It means that we provide a developer with a basic hello world app in the language of the choice that they are selecting in the template. But alongside that, it's important to note that that basic code that is getting generated, it is having the best practices built in. For example, the coding best practices, the security best practices, the unit tests, and stuff like that. We also provide them with ops code for their Kubernetes manifest, for their CI/CD manifest, observability, etc. And we create two different repositories for them. One is the application repository, and one is the deployment repository, which is kind of a standard best practice in the GitOps world. Once they have the code, it is in a state that they can run directly on their local environment. I think that's the promise that we're providing. They can just directly go to the terminal and try to build their application and test it out. Okay, so the next milestone is to take their app to the cloud.
Yeah, cloud. My favorite part, the cloud.
Yes. And we help them, like, of course, with the CI/CD manifest that we have provided. There is a CI/CD pipeline that is already there. Once the initial the onboarding is done, all that they need to do is to just start making commits to the app repo, and the CI/CD pipeline will just work for them. Okay. Alongside, we provide automated just-in-time provisioning. The Like, for example, if you're adding a new environment, right, you would expect that a new namespace should be created. They can create the namespace by themselves, but we as a platform team are doing the heavy lifting for them and creating those namespaces, creating those Argo CD apps, provisioning the secrets that are required for making the pipeline work. And all of that is done as part of, like, the initial bootstrapping. It is done in such a way that it is multi-tenant, but it is also, taking away the pain from the user because they don't have to do the manual work. And
Yeah.
finally, for the last milestone, we provide a single pane of glass experience, which is a plugin in our Backstage-based portal, as I had shown that in the previous diagram, one of the previous diagrams that we had. All of this, again, Perry also showed a glimpse of this in our in the Q2 talk that he did. So the link to that we might have shared already, but go through that, and it will give you an idea about what that onboarding template looks like, what the single pane of glass experience looks like. Okay, so we talked about the app repo. This is a screenshot of, like, what the app repo looks like. There is, as you can see, that there is Python code for the API server. There's config for security tools. Kodiak is actually the code name for one of our internal security tools that we have. So there is a config corresponding to it that is sitting nicely over here. There's a Docker file which references security blessed images from our internal repository of, like, these blessed images that have been created over a period of time. If they use those blessed images, we are rest assured that everything will be fine, at least as far as the base container images is concerned. What they add on top of it is something that they have to secure, but at least we are providing enough base images to make sure that their containers are secure. And there are detailed instructions in the README on how to get started on the local environment. There's a makefile also, like, which has all the code for building your containers.
So Vikram, this is the repo that the developer like needs to focus on their service. Like they're creating an API or service, they just focus on this, and they don't have to focus that much of like how my app is going to run on the cloud, on premise, or maybe two clouds. Maybe it's Kubernetes, maybe it's not Kubernetes, right? Containers run everywhere, but most likely it's going to be Kubernetes. But they focus on this repo that has everything that they need, and then you have a separate Git repo for the concerns of like promoting it into dev, stage, blue, green, and that's the cognitive load that we want to like relieve the developer from, right? That everybody does the things the same way. They focus on the app, and they may be working on different services, right? A developer doesn't work on one repo. That's something in the misconception. People say like, oh, I'm going to work on one repo, one app. When you join an enterprise, right, you may be working on the payment service one month, another month you're working on the UX experience and the APIs that connect to databases. Another one, you get moved to a different team, but you open the repo and all of them look like this. Oh, there's a photo called Kodiak, there's a make file, there's a Docker file, and you continue with that consistency for the developer, right?
Absolutely, and I think that is a really good point because, one, there is segregation of the business logic from the configuration because of the two repos that we have created. And you're right, like, the app repo is done in such a way that you can actually run this the same code that is shown over here on our platform, like, what we are providing, but you might as well take it and run it elsewhere also. I mean, it's not that this has something which is very specific to the way that we are doing it on our on a platform, or like just tied to how the deployments might happen. You can just run it locally, and if it runs locally, then it will be running on any platform. You could directly spin up an EC2 instance and deploy it over there also if you want to. But the key point is what you mentioned about the deployment repo, which is something that we generate. This deployment repo is all about how do you take it to the cloud, right? And it is decoupled from the application repo on purpose. So what you see over here is that there is an Argo folder which has the Helm charts for the CI/CD pipeline manifest, and you can see a breakdown of that Argo folder over here on the right. You can see that there's a lot of templates in there that make the magic happen as far as the deployments are concerned. It also has a Kubernetes folder which has various folders inside of it for the different environment and region combinations, and there are values .yaml file for the Helm chart at different levels, so that you can override some of these values for the specific region, for the specific environment, or at a higher level. And finally, we have an ethos.yaml file, which is a lightweight GitOps abstraction. This is where you would specify, your different environment and regions and the clusters which map to them. This is the file that we read, the provisioner component that was mentioning earlier. The provisioner component, it reads this file to figure out what are the namespaces that I need to create, what are the Argo CD apps that I need to create. So the key point is that all the configuration related to your deployments and GitOps is there in this deployment repo, and it is segregated from the application repo, and it provides the standardization that Carlos, you were talking about. Everybody knows that you would expect an application repo and a deployment repo corresponding to a repository.
Yeah, and this is the repo that the developer doesn't maintain, right? But they collaborate with the platform engineer. So there'll be a platform engineer, used to be called DevOps engineer. Right now it's called platform engineer. We're building a platform because you're doing, and somebody asked in the chat, what did DevX scientists do? So it's part of making the platform, right? Going over this user experience to have consistency. You mentioned it, thousands of services, right? Could be thousands of repos. This could be a mono repo, right? All configurations for a certain business unit, but you can have a couple of them. The apps are going to be like 1,000. I think we have a good question here. I don't know if you can bring it in, Uri. When should the YAML and the code be at the same repo, and when should they be separated? So that's an excellent question. I'll give Vikram the chance to answer it. When should they be together? When should they be separated?
Yeah, so I think as a best practice, what we are really doing is that the default template that we have, it is segregated inside as part of the app repo and the deploy repo. So it's basically for making sure that the application logic and the configuration are segregated, and there are cases where there is a separate development team, and then there are separate SREs which are managing the deployments, and you want to be able to provide different RBACs for both of them. Only the developers are supposed to have, let's say, the access to the app repo, and only the SREs are supposed to have access to the deployment repo. So if you're working in that kind of an environment, and that's the recommendation that we have, that you have clear segregation, then you should have two repositories where your deployment YAMLs are separate and the application logic is in a separate repo altogether. But we have seen certain cases where people prefer the deploy YAMLs and the application logic to be part of the same repo as well. But those are exceptions rather than the rule. That is mostly the case when the same team, the same developer, it's a small scale kind of a deployment, and the same team or same developer is managing both the application and the deployments for the same repo. And because it's the same developer, or it's a small scale thing, it works, right? But for a larger scale project, I would recommend going separately and having a separate app repo and a deployment repo.
Yeah, I agree. What I've seen is my tip is the best practice is, at the end of the day, is have them separately. You can start together in one repo, and the use cases are like POC, right? Workshop, demos, KubeCon. You will see a lot of KubeCons, like having one repo, everything in one repo, is an example. But the idea is that if you have folders in terms of GitOps in the same repo, treat them as if they were different Git repos. That way, maybe for example, you can have an infra folder or DevOps folder that you can like maybe a month from now decide like we're ready to make this app available in multiple environments. Remove that DevOps folder into a separate repo, and then everything works the same. I think that's the tip that I've been giving people when they start. Just create a DevOps repo. Sometimes I make it hidden, like .devops or .infra, so people don't see it. Like you don't have to see it. It's just YAML sitting there. But don't spend a lot of time in the YAML. Spend the time writing your Java, your Python, your AI code, right?
Exactly, right. I think having it as part of the application repository also, at least in my mind, increases, some of the cognitive load on the developers also. Like that's what I've seen.
Yep.
So we're trying to recommend keeping them separate unless there is a specific reason that you have to bring them together. Okay. Now let's talk about enterprise readiness considerations, or some of the requirements that we keep in mind as we think about enterprise readiness. So as an enterprise for Adobe, the bar is really high, and we have to think about many different aspects and factors that make our platform enterprise ready. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these factors that we keep in mind. And in the comments, please let me know if like some of these factors resonate with you, or you have additional factors that you keep in mind and stuff like that. So the first one is a unique software ID. So we've made some great progress in recent times to ensure that every piece of software that is generated through our curated developer experience, it gets a unique software ID. This helps us with using it as a glue to stitch workloads together, to troubleshoot issues, to help with the attribution, to help with the cost chargeback, and a host of other advantages that it provides. Then the second one is abstractions. So this is a potentially controversial topic. I know, like different people have different opinions on abstractions, but we've realized that abstractions are not really bad, right? It's a taboo topic, but we believe that if they are designed well, they are not leaky, and they are well funded, that the platform team can continue to build that abstraction, then it's actually it can turn out to be a good thing for the platform team in order to provide the functionality and hide the complexity of the underlying platform itself. Then there's a new concept that we're introducing, which is called sealed paved roads. We are realizing that while the paved roads that were already there, they provide a good start to people, it is very easy for them to veer off the paved road. For example, one can choose to remove some of the security controls, or they can delete or reorder the steps in the pipeline. For example, they could potentially delete the scanning step altogether. This causes a lot of issues for the platform team when providing support or performing maintenance or performing upgrades. And one of the things that we are now trying to do is to seal these paved roads, so that for the different use cases, so that when somebody is reaching out to the platform team, we know exactly what they did and what their pipeline is and how they are sort of operating in a certain way. And if somebody decides to break the seal, we will make it really hard for them to break it. But and internally we consider them as being on the dirt path as opposed to being on the paved road. So if they want to go off-roading, yeah, go ahead and do the off-roading and go on the dirt path, but you can't really expect the same kind of support or the same kind of experience that you would get on a paved road, right? So we're also yeah, go ahead.
They get that if you get out of the path of the road, right, you get that cognitive load that you don't want, right? So it's you want control, but you also don't want the cognitive load. So it's a balance to have. And I see the sealed path, paved roads, it resonates with golden path, right? In platform engineer, we talk a lot about like, here's the golden path, here's the skeleton, or scaffold, right, that they do for the Hello World app, everything embedded, and then they start changing things. And then they ask like, why did it broke? So in this case,
first they put the guardrails on, and then they find ways to jump over them.
So So it's like golden path that we have to put guardrails, and now we have to put seals on top of it, right? As a platform team.
Yeah,
Very, very, very and it's enterprise, like that's the word. Like we don't do it because is something that we want to add or we want to work on. It's required. This is enterprise software, right? We have to make sure that it doesn't have security incidents. It needs to be 100% 24/7 up and running, reliability, right? So it's something that is necessary for the good of the software, the product that you're building, right? So the golden paths are there, but we're putting a seal so you are aware that it's there, right?
yeah, and we want to be aware of, like, somebody's breaking the seal. So we want to get to know that this person broke the seal for this particular service. I think that is
Yeah,
also part of the thing, or like, a thing that we're really building. Earlier, like, we didn't even know if somebody is veering off the paved path and what exactly they did. So
And that also relates to what you said at the start, that you have to treat your platform as a product. When
exactly.
we're building products, we're constantly validating, researching, collecting feedback, QAing. But when you're doing an internal platform, you like assume, oh, the developers will figure it out, or yeah, I paved a golden path and they will follow it. But that's a good point. You have to think of them like users, and users will always find a way around your
Exactly.
intended flow.
Right. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's a learning that we have had over a period of time. But again, let's move forward. The next one is self-service. It is, something that most of us probably think about, but white glove treatment is not scalable. For if you want to operate at a scale like, we can only scale if you have an intuitive, self-discoverable, and a self-service way for all developers at Adobe to go through the end-to-end developer experience journey, by themselves. I mean, without creating tickets or without, getting help from the platform team. So when you operate at Adobe scale, every small improvement in efficiency can have a multiplier effect on the cost savings. Keeping a track of how efficiently the platform is running and how efficiently the clients are running on top of the platform are, the key to our efficiency strategy. In some cases, we actually proactively make adjustments to the client resource allocations based on the historical usage. So that has been working out really well for us, and helping us save some cost along the way. A related topic is chargeback and showback. We provide the clients information about their usage and cost consumption and charge it back to their cost centers. This is actually turning out to be an effective way to make the teams a more responsible citizen of the platform and make them more accountable. Multi-tenancy is actually built into the platform itself. We ensure that each client has their own namespace and isolation boundary. Most of our clusters are multi-tenant, and we add RBAC controls to the various developer surfaces that the developer touches. And finally, unified support. We are working on a unified support strategy where clients can get assistance where they need it, when they need it, no matter which developer surface they are on. This assistance may not just be in terms of, like, I've run into a problem, can you help me out? It could also be in terms of, I want to write code that is integrating with a Adobe specific service or a Adobe specific technology. Can you help me out and like help me write code that integrates with that specific Adobe specific technology? So we are, working on that also in order to provide that support experience. And I can these are some of the key things that are top of mind for us, but then, as you can imagine, there are more enterprise readiness factors. And I'm sure, like, some of you would have already accounted for these considerations in your developer platforms. The key message here is that enterprise readiness is hard, and it's a balancing act actually between the different considerations mentioned over here. So let me know in the comments if you are able to resonate with some of these, or like there are additional factors that you consider in your organization. Okay, security. One of the key factors. This is one of the key factors that we focus on. At Adobe. and we are working on ensuring that all aspects of end-to-end developer experience are secure. This involves the code generation and commit signing and RBAC as well, having security checks when PRs are raised and enforcing the checks to disallow deployments in some cases, having pre-built tests such as SAST and SCA to analyze source code for security vulnerabilities and identifying and managing the components and dependencies, including build provenance and SBOM with artifacts when we build the artifacts, and publishing the scanning results with the artifacts when we build the artifact, um, or when we scan the artifact, and doing binary analysis, for example, or signing the artifacts before storing them in Artifactory, among other things. As you can imagine, supply chain security is a world in itself. We can just have a dedicated session around supply chain security. I actually have a talk coming up at KubeCon, North America, called Secure by Design CI/CD, where Jesse from Autodesk and I'll be talking, and going deeper into this particular topic, and you know, um, sharing a reference architecture as well and other practical insights from Adobe and Autodesk. I'll actually include a link to that in the
Yeah.
comments so that you can sign up for that talk if you're attending KubeCon.
Yeah, if you're attending KubeCon, reach out. I'll be there with the ECAS team, and also the Canoe members. Most of the Canoe members, Adobe and Autodesk, are part of the Canoe members. And in Canoe, we're looking into this aspect of securing the CI/CD. This is a very long list, and people realize that this is not security when the software is running. This is building the software, right? People, there's another slide that goes into like when the software is running, right? That can work with the things that we do in CI/CD. For example, signing the software, making sure that it comes from the right registry and such. But this is the secure aspect that needs to happen in your CI/CD when you're building this software. So it takes a lot of effort to build, and you don't want a developer to be like building this over and over, the next dev team and the next dev team. This is something that needs to be an enterprise established by the platform team and included by default. Like it's just something that is part of the culture of building software and Adobe, right?
Right. Okay, I think we have around 10 minutes more, so let's see if we can cover the rest of the stuff. Let's talk about developer experience layers. How we think about developers experience as stack layers. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that. At the bottom, we have the managed cloud provider infrastructure, which includes our fleet of Kubernetes clusters. I think, Udi, you were talking a little bit about that. So that is being provided by a separate team, which is managing the entire fleet of the clusters. All of our developer experience is actually built on top of this infra that they provide. The first layer is the hosted tooling or hosted infra, which includes managed tooling like Argo CD, Argo Workflows, GitHub. And that's what I was mentioning earlier, that the raw clusters are provided by the cloud provider infrastructure team. And then we add some magic on top of it in terms of this managed hosted infra that our team is managing, and then make them work for our GitOps related foundation. The next layer is the platform foundations. This layer consists of different foundations that the developer experience depends on, directly or indirectly. On top of the foundations, we offer platform capabilities which leverage the different foundations under the hood. And finally, on top of all of this, there are developer services which expose the platform capabilities as seamless developer workflows. Security and compliance and support and training are cross-cutting concerns, as you can imagine. And this is actually a higher level representation. We actually have another slide which goes a little bit deeper into it, and we'll double click into each of the layers and peel the layers of the onion, as they say. Okay, so here we go. As we mentioned, we have the managed hosted infra at the bottom. In this, we have the managed hosted tools such as Argo CD, Argo Workflows, and GitHub, and managed hosted components which can be bespoke components also that we host, such as the provisioner component in the architecture diagram that we shared earlier, or there are these observability related components that I was mentioning about earlier, which are specific to Adobe. Um, and on top of this, we have the platform foundations. There are many foundations that we have. Some of them are actually listed over here. For our developer, so GitOps Foundation we already touched upon earlier. For our developer portal, there is a catalog foundation. We also have a foundation for our API management related functionality, and the new kid on the block, which is the foundation for AI as well. Most of the teams are building the foundation for AI anyway. On top of the foundations, we have the platform capabilities. Some examples of capabilities are CI/CD, continuous testing, API management, diagnostics, and insights. You would notice that some capabilities share the same name as the foundation itself. We can take a quick example to make a distinction between the two. For example, the API Management Foundation includes the core services and tools and components that enable the management of the APIs themselves. So it's like,
I
part where
see.
the infrastructure is part of it. And then the API management capability is providing features and functionality like publishing the APIs or monitoring API usage or applying policies or API versioning or analytics on top of it. So it leverages the
So,
API management foundation to deliver the higher level functionalities to the developer surfaces.
so
So
it's
that
kind of producer and consumer, right? The foundation APIs is like the platform team using to produce APIs that they use to produce the services, the
right,
capabilities, right? And then the capabilities API is like how people are going to consume the capabilities. So
absolutely.
consumers are going to consume these APIs. How do we consume them? I guess it's the next layer, right?
Right. Yeah. Another example is the GitOps Foundation, which powers not only CI/CD but other capabilities such as continuous testing and infrastructure provisioning as well. One capability can actually use many foundations to get the job done, and many capabilities can leverage the same foundation also. So it's like,
Yep.
many kind of relationship. So on
You
top of
mentioned a little bit of GitOps infrastructure. So for folks that don't know this terminology, like GitOps can be used to deploy kind of a deployment, the container in the Kubernetes cluster. But GitOps also using Kubernetes can deploy infrastructure, like for example, a VPC or a cloud storage. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, the infrastructure provisioning part is like, deploying databases or caches or queues, or those can be powered through this, yeah, the same GitOps Foundation as well, and they'll be already working on that internally. So on top of the capabilities, as we said, the developer surfaces, they expose sealed paved roads and integrated workflows. These developer surfaces include the IDEs, GitHub. We already talked about them. So yeah, I mean, this is how we think about, like, the developer experience as composed of layers. Layer n is dependent on the layer n minus one, and it is powering layer n plus one, to do its job. So that's how we kind of like, think about it. We try to make sure that, layer n is not really accessing layer n minus two directly. So it's that kind of architecture that we are, trying to build.
So in this case, developer workflows should not be talking directly to foundation APIs.
Yeah.
This gives you the capability of deciding to improve or change or modify these foundation APIs, but they only talk to the capabilities APIs that don't change, right? This is
Well,
abstraction that you were mentioning that some folks
exactly.
are disagreements or they don't know how to get started. And also ask, like, what is an abstraction, right? It's very theoretical, but in this case we have, like, it's a good thing that we have an examples and a good this is an amazing architecture diagram. I'm going to steal it from you for the next kind of talk that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the next thing, which is actually the most interesting part in my mind, which is about the learnings and the takeaways.
That one's for you, Carlos. Nice, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you.
And great topic. That's for Vic.
So first off, supply chain security is table stakes, right? And instead of securing later, as a lot of us used to do in our previous life, we should be securing by default and finding ways to secure the workflows and workloads continuously on a continuous basis. Second, the platform team should have more control over what the clients can do and what kind of changes are allowed and what kind of modifications are allowed. Keeping it all open and too flexible will cause the platform team a lot of pain. That's what we have realized. The takeaway is that the seal paved roads concept, right? So provide those seal paved roads, and make sure that the clients are following those seal paved roads, and simplify the platform team's life and the client's life as well. Third, the tools are not the same as
Not
capability,
capability.
as we saw in the previous diagram as well. We should not expose the tools directly to the platform clients, and expose the capabilities and expose those capabilities via the developer surfaces, as these workflows and sealed paved roads. This will help you, as Carlos was mentioning about, with replacing one tool with the another in the future. It is not a matter of if you have to replace; it's a matter of when. Time will
When
come that you have to replace one tool with the another. That's the nature of the industry that we are in. Let's safeguard and build for the future.
and
So
and we
yeah,
have a question from the audience. Would you can bring the what lessons learned at Adobe can apply to legacy enterprise that are just starting their platform journey? Can you have that? Yeah, so this one
Yeah,
is, I think it's related to the tools versus capabilities. People
yeah,
can start building capabilities on top of maybe legacy tools that they have in place, build that API, that capability. Then you can start modifying and replacing that legacy tool with something else. But at least today, you can start with that API and that capability and
yeah,
that abstraction, right?
and
absolutely.
that's an important note because a lot of our community members or people watching at home are platform engineers at legacy, or like maybe a bank or some other organization that's not Adobe, that's not so technologically advanced and forward thinking. So I think, and you can't become Adobe in one year or one go. So I think it's a very good point for people watching at home, that you can reach that level, but there are steps in the way.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on, the next one is, I've been talking to a lot of companies outside of Adobe as well, including Autodesk, Salesforce, AWS, and a few others. And the realization is that the requirements for the platforms and the problems that they face are very similar in nature. The specific tools and the technologies that we might be using under the hood, they'd be different, but the capabilities are very similar. So I think the takeaway is that we should collaborate, share, and learn from each other. Case in point, Adobe and Salesforce, they are competitors, for some of the products, but we're actually collaborating and having
Yes.
these, discussions together on how to build platforms, the internal developer platforms, and how to make our developers more productive. So you might be competing, but you can still collaborate. Is I think the key point over here. Number
Yeah.
five, building a platform is a long-term investment. I think, Woody, you were alluding to this. It takes time, but we need to ruthlessly prioritize and investing building what matters, and making it build to last for 5 to 7 years, for example. I think that kind of a time frame you need to sort of keep in mind in order to build the right thing. Next, we realized some time ago that the platform team can't build it all, and we may be able to provide an extensible foundation, but may not be able to cater to all the capabilities or all the workflows or the use cases. But we have been investing in making our platform contributable, and so should you. That's the recommendation that I would provide you. That think about contributability from the very beginning, how the teams outside of the platform can actually contribute to your platform itself. Next one is very interesting. At a certain point in time, we were assuming that we are catering to developers and they'd be happy to run a few commands, write a bit of ops code, and if the UI or the experience is not really all that great, then they would understand. The internal developers, right? They should understand, and they'd be okay with an engineering kind of a UI or engineering kind of an experience. But we were wrong. They are developers, but they developers of the platform, but they are actually think we need to think about them as the users of the platform. If you're building a platform as a product, then think of them as actual users. They want an easy to use platform where they can get sort of productive really quickly, and we want to make sure that the experience is delightful from the very beginning. And finally, the impact. How do we know, what is the impact that we are having on the developer productivity, for example, or if there are new features or changes that are getting rolled out. So it's important to think about the KPIs and the success metrics from the word go, and how do we measure and report them. So yeah, and with that, these are kind of the main learnings and the takeaways that we had as Adobe. Let me know, if you're able to resonate with some of these and whether these are helpful.
Yep.
But I think that's pretty much it from my side. I'd like to take this opportunity to actually thank the team also, who've been working tirelessly for so many years in order to get us to the point that we are here. I'm speaking over here because of all the work that has gone, into building this platform over the last so many years, and so many people have been involved. So, thank you, team, for making that happen.
Yeah, great set of platform engineers. I've been working with some of them, and they're excellent engineers and excellent human beings. They have a lot of empathy for their developers. They invest a lot of time on just thinking on how to make the experience better for developers, so they can concentrate on their job and not concentrate on things that are like the infrastructure or the observability or the CI/CD pipelines, and they can just write code and then enjoy the rest of the day just not worrying about the infrastructure or the reliability, right, of the
Yeah.
cloud or the on-premise system. So with that, let's see, we have more questions, but yeah, we have a couple of links in the chat, and we're going to put it there, like to the Canoe.io website that is part of the Adobe and Salesforce and Autodesk, the coming talks and the blog post. So we thank everyone that it was live and watching. If you're also watching this recording, join us in the platform community in LinkedIn. Join the page so you can get notified when there's a new event. And we're planning the fourth quarter. So there's going to be more streams like this with great hosts and great guests like Vikram here, and to all of you, thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next live stream on building platforms with the platforms community.
Yeah.
And thank you, Carlos, for co-hosting this and leading the discussion. And huge thank you to Vikram for sharing your knowledge and experience with us and with the rest of the community. It's been an awesome session, and I've learned so much, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So hopefully we'll meet again.
Yeah, thank you for having me over here. I had a great time, preparing for this. And I mean, at times, when you prepare for these kind of sessions, you realize that there is a lot more in your mind that's going on that you've not really captured somewhere. So I'm glad that I was able to capture it in one place. It's definitely going to be helpful internally as well.
Yeah, you did an excellent job. Go ahead, Mario.
Yeah, I was just saying we will have more opportunities to deep dive into specific areas of this session, like we've done in the past with Canoe and
we're going to do an Adobe episode 3. We're going to bring how to build clusters, Kubernetes and add-ons and Argo CD, more deep dives if people are asking for that. So we'll have someone from Adobe platform engineer, people that actually are on the field, right, building these platforms, to talk about how they're scaling these systems. So thank you so much to everyone. This is also on YouTube, so subscribe and click the bell. I guess that's all the influencers say. So I want to say it also. And have a wonderful rest of the week. And Vikram and myself will be next Tuesday, September 17th, on the San Francisco office, AWS office. We're going to have an afternoon. Vikram's going to give a talk about his platform that he's building in Adobe. I'm running a workshop with Canoe that includes Backstage, Kubernetes, Crossplane if you want to hands-on. And also, if you're an EKS customer, you can come in and tell us what are the features that we need to build next. So until next time, thank you so much, folks.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.